If you're a landlord looking to rent out one of your rental properties in Ontario, you know very clearly that the state of affairs is absolutely crazy. What got us here, and where do we go from here? It's no secret that fraud is very rampant within the rental market within Ontario. There was a time where fraud wasn't that prevalent. You would rent out a rental property, whether it was a detached home, townhome, condo townhome, whatever it was, and you wouldn't get fraudulent applications. The people that would apply to rent out your rental property would submit a real job letter, they would submit their real credit report, and all the information on their rental application would be truthful and accurate. Times have definitely changed. And now, as a landlord, if you're somebody who's looking to rent out one of your income properties, one of your rental properties that you own in Ontario, you are faced with massive fraud on the side of the tenant. Fake job letters, fake credit reports, fake references, you name it. Everything under the sun is fake on an application that's coming in order to rent a home, a condo, an apartment. So why is that? And kind of how did we get here? I think it's a combination of a few different things. So when we look at the state of affairs, right, we can't forget, what COVID did on the rental market within Ontario. So COVID was a huge factor that resulted in the relationship between landlords and tenants in Ontario kind of really hitting rock bottom, right? We were in a time where tenants weren't paying rent, whether they legitimately didn't have jobs or whether they decided this is great, they can stop paying rent and have free accommodation. It was a massacre, and what happened was, months, years went by where tenants stayed in their dwelling and didn't pay landlords. So landlords are really beaten up from that. And this is just a pic. This is the reality I'm just painting, for you, because it's not uncommon that landlords went 6 months, a year, 2 years of not collecting rent during COVID. And what that did financially for a lot of landlords was absolutely significant. So that is in the recent past, right? So landlords are very much beaten up from that. So as a result, what I see in the marketplace, again, dealing with landlords who own rental properties, dealing with tenants who are looking to rent properties, is um, we're seeing kind of the aftermath of that, the aftermath of COVID, and landlords have become across the board more careful, more strict, more thorough in their tenant selection process. And this is not every landlord, right? There are still landlords that will do no checks, will accept tenants, and do no background check. Very simple or no employment check. That's a whole different story that we can get into. But it's not all across the board, right? So there are still landlords that don't do very good or thorough checks. But for the most part now in the marketplaces, landlords are doing um, much more thorough checks of their tenants. So I would say that the landscape has changed. So times have changed. Basically, is what sums up the rental space now. And so that's one thing, right? Times have changed. The landlords were really beaten up from COVID, right? We'll put that to beaten up, beaten up from COVID. Okay, so landlords were beaten up from COVID, and then now times have changed. So what are tenants doing as a result? So what tenants are doing, kind of all across the board, is they are kind of adapting to landlords being more strict with their selection process. And as such, what they're doing is they're producing fake job letters. they're producing fake credit reports. They're producing um, fake references. You name it, all across the board, tenants are doing things in order to try to acquire a rental accommodation. So why are they doing this? They're doing this in part, and this is my take on it, being a real estate investor for 20 years and being a real estate broker myself for 20 years, helping people buy and sell rental properties, any type of transaction really is. Um, the tenants as a result have become, they've adapted to what landlords are doing, and as such they're falsifying their information in order to make themselves look better. So tenants are trying to make themselves look better. Tenants are trying to look better in the eyes of the landlord, and they're doing that by falsifying documents. So what does that mean? So again, fake job letter, fake credit report. If their credit is not very good, they're putting together or getting a graphic designer to put together a fake credit report showing a higher credit report. So they're doing kind of everything in order to um, make themselves look better in the eyes of the landlord. Now, let's not forget that, they're with everything, right? There's good tenants, there's good landlords, right? We know that, right? What I'm seeing as well too on the grassroots, and again, dealing with landlords, dealing with tenants, is the tenants that are falsifying their documents. It kind of falls into two different camps. Number one, the first camp, which we'll say is, I would say the first camp is, let's call them good tenants. The first camp is good tenants. They feel that they have to falsify their documentation in order to win a place. And as such, they may put together a job letter where they're increasing their salary. They're increasing their gross annual salary. That would be one example, and they feel that they need to do that because their current salary is not high enough in order to acquire a place. So that's what's happening. You have good tenants that are getting mixed up into falsifying documents, and they're getting caught. Some of them are getting caught, a lot of them are not getting caught. And that's kind of a reality of what's going on. The second camp of tenants that are falsifying documents, I would say they're the bad tenants. So what do I mean by that? So basically, bad tenants where they're going in with a motive, they're going in with completely false information, and they're not presenting the entire picture. So let's give an example. There's so many examples in my head. They may present a fake job letter from a company. They may present a fake credit report. It may be just them moving into a property, but once the landlord accepts them, it's them moving into the property along with other parties that are moving into the property, multiple people moving into the property. So they're hiding the amount of occupants that are moving in. Lots of fraud and lots of different ways in which the bad tenants are kind of packaging things in order to try to get a, um, into a rental property. So essentially, the long story short is, within the rental market right now, within the rental space, there's a lot of fraud. And why has that happened? It's happened because landlords got beat up a lot during COVID. It was an absolute disaster. It was ridiculous, where many tenants took advantage of the situation and completely stopped paying rent. Yes, were there tenants that didn't have jobs that couldn't pay rent? Yes, of course, right? But what unfortunately happened is, too many people took advantage of the system, stopped paying rent, and the landlords got battered. As a result of that, the landlords have adapted now, and they're not putting up with crap anymore. They are being very vigilant with regards to their checks. on tenants now. And in a good way, it's preventing some of these bad actors, the bad tenants, from getting into properties because the checks now are more thorough across the board, which is good because it's kind of blocking out the bad tenants from getting into properties who have malicious intent. Um, but again, what's unfortunate and sad in this whole process is, even the good tenants, like I mentioned over here, tenants that have good jobs, have a good credit, they feel pressured. They feel that, they need to falsify their income, they need to falsify their situation in order to acquire a rental accommodation because, they may feel that their income is not high enough. And in many cases, that's the case. So it's a complete gong show right now in the rental space. If you're a landlord or a tenant navigating things, you have to be very diligent as a landlord. You have to be experienced with your gut instinct, right? If you're not experienced as a landlord selecting tenants, you need to bring in somebody who has experience, whether it's like a realtor like myself, if whoever it is, they need to have experience as a landlord themselves in the rental market, screening applicants. We look for certain things, and without giving too much information, right? Because you never want to give your secrets to the bad actors, to the bad tenants, right? You don't want to disclose um, you know your intel and your secrets, right? There's certain things that you do in order to check, whether a tenant is a good tenant or not. But what I'm saying is that if you're a landlord, if you own rental properties, in Ontario, whether it's one rental property, whether it's multiple, and if you don't have experience in real estate or you don't feel comfortable screening tenants, you need to bring in somebody who, with experience, who knows what they're doing. Very, very important because it helps to keep out, the bad tenants out of properties. Because as we know, lots of months can go by, literally years can go by, where a tenant is still residing in a property and you literally can't do anything about it as per the Residential Tenancy Act in Ontario. That's a story for another video, but hope you found this helpful. It's wild out there. Be vigilant, do your checks as a landlord. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer any question. See you in the next video. Take care.